Hi, and welcome to this special edition of Peak Life. I'm your host, Karen Myers, and today we're going to be talking about a cold case homicide. Joining me is Detective Allison Robert with the Chesapeake Police Department. Welcome. Welcome to the show. So, can you briefly explain the John Doe case and how long it has remained unsolved?
So this is a case actually from 1983. Back on November 19th, 1983, two men went into the woods near the dead end of Happy Acres Road. They were walking around and they stumbled across a skeleton that was fully clothed, just lying on the ground on its back. So they contacted police. Police responded, collected the remains, and those were transported to the medical examiner's office, where they had a forensic anthropologist look over them and estimate that they believed they belonged to a white male, maybe between the ages of 20 and 30. And they were able to kind of get just some physical descriptors, size, weight, things like that from the remains.
So they actually did a recreation, if you will, a mold?
Yes. So back then, they did coordinate with the FBI. They had a couple of resources available to them where they could try to do a clay rendering of what they believed the male may have looked like based off of his skull. And then they also had a sketch artist that tried to render what they believed that he would have looked like based off of his remains.
So what type of DNA evidence was available in this case?
So back then, DNA was really just kind of in the beginning stages. So there wasn't much that they could do with it then, except try to just establish some bases so that the DNA belongs to a male, or that the origins maybe a white male, things of that nature. So once DNA started kind of coming into the picture, they did send off some of the remains to be tested, and those were put into the CODIS database. That's a database that collects DNA from either convicted offenders or things like that, and there were no hits. So it kind of hit an obstacle there.
Right.
I started working on this case in 2020. There were a lot of cold cases across the country which were having success with the forensic genealogy. And so I tried to look into some grant funding that would help us send the bones to a private lab that may have a little bit more resources available to them. The issue with the remains was obviously they were so contaminated based off of the environment. And we believe that based off of a coin in the pocket, it said it was from 1982. So we believed that the remains had been there for about a year.
And this is the Deep Creek section, which is known now as the Deep Creek section of Chesapeake.
Yes.
Okay. So how was the birth mother identified through the DNA?
So we did use the DNA with a private lab before, back in probably about 2022, and they were not able to get a good profile for us. So we weren't able to use that into pursuing any type of forensic genealogy. I coordinated with the state police last year, Virginia State Police. They had had success with a different lab with some contaminated remains. So we tried them, and they actually were able to get a really good profile. They started working with that profile, doing the forensic genealogical research, and they were able to identify both what we believe to be the birth father and birth mother of this John Doe.
So how does that work, just in layman's terms, if you will? You submit DNA, and is it because of all the databases that like Ancestry.com and things like that, that people enter their information in and DNA, is that how you're able to find a match?
Yeah, so there's a couple different databases that they reference. Obviously, the CODIS one is the one that is in coordination with the courts and law enforcement. But there's a lot of private databases out there, like GEDmatch or Ancestry. Just tons of different agencies out there where you can submit your own DNA to try to find your own relatives. And you can opt in to share that, so that way you're generating matches of potential family members for yourself. So when they plug our DNA profile into that system, it's going to hit on any type of relatives and then give us an estimation of how distant the relative could be.
And there have been other cases, famous cases, that have actually been solved using that.
Yes.
So unfortunately, we still do not have a name for this victim. Can you tell us why, since you have located the birth mother?
So our next steps are the birth mother. We had made contact with her through another police agency that assisted with us in a different state. And she gave that baby up for adoption when he was born. So even though we kind of know where his story began, we don't know where his story went from there. And obviously we know where his story ended. So we're kind of trying to fill in those gaps. our next step is going to be to try to look for birth records from the city where he was born and try to see if we can identify a hospital he was born at or maybe what adoption agency he went to.
So how can the community help? Because someone who may have been in this area during that time may be able to shed a little bit of light on this situation. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So one of the questions, we know he was born in Maryland. So now one of the big questions is how did he come down here to Virginia? So once we have him identified, it will certainly be a huge push for information from the public if they knew him. Maybe they went to school with him or lived in the same neighborhood. But until then, sometimes it's helpful just to gather information from people who lived here then, because the landscape has obviously changed so much. It's not reflective of what it was like back then.
No, absolutely. Even looking at pictures from '83, you probably wouldn't even recognize some of this area, but a lot of people have been in the community for very many years, or their family has, so hopefully somebody out there may know something, or something may jog in their memory if they see this. So how has the turn in technology with DNA, how has that affected cases that you work on every day?
It's kind of just looking at you're taking a piece of evidence and you're trying to get a forensic story from it. So the DNA is obviously a huge advancement, especially for these old cases, because it's something that wasn't really in play investigatively back then, but now it is a resource that's available. So it's kind of combing through that evidence again and saying, hey, they did everything they could with it back then, but are there now new tools and resources that we can reapply?
And it was instrumental in the Baby Daniel case we were talking earlier before the show. Definitely. So also wanted to mention that we have some cold case videos that we have done and will continue to do. And folks can go to the YouTube page, Chesapeake Television YouTube page, to look at those videos and see if maybe they may know something about the case, something may jog their memory as well. But also, if someone wanted to find the list of all of the cold case homicides in the city of Chesapeake, where could they go to find that?
So all of our cold cases are listed on our City of Chesapeake cold case page. And again, just as you said, they do have those links where we can watch videos that some of the investigators have done on the cases. And anyone can call us at any time. Our non-emergency number is 757-382-6161, or they can contact the criminal investigations section if they have information that they'd like to add or update to a case.
And it's anonymous. Someone doesn't have to give their name or any of their personal information.
So we also utilize the Crime Line, which is a completely anonymous source. They have a newer app available. It's the P3 Tips app. And so if somebody doesn't really feel comfortable, giving us their name or their contact information for follow-up, they can submit that tip anonymously online or via phone, and it'll still make its way to us to add into the case file.
And they will be assigned a number and potentially could receive up to $1,500 in reward money, depending on the information they provide and if there is an arrest.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Allison, for coming on. I think this is great information, and hopefully somebody out there will see this and maybe something will click, and you're basically looking for a piece of puzzle.
Yes.
So, great. All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on this special edition of Peake Life.